Recording in progress. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, it is a real pleasure to welcome you today at this global workshop for funding and financing transboundary water cooperation and basin development in Geneva. I hope that you all had a smooth journey given this time of the year and the weather condition. It's fantastic to see so many of you here today at this beginning of the day. As you know, this is the second workshop on this very important topic. The first one took place 3 years ago already, organized by the UNEC Water Convention Secretariat. It was online at the time due to the pandemic of COVID-19. And today it's a real pleasure, as usual, to do it face to face. Much water has passed under the bridge since 2020. A lot of work has been done, a lot of experience has been made. And today, it is really a great honor to welcome more than 100 people who have actually registered for this event. Some are already on their way, still on their way to attend this workshop in person. Welcome. We certainly have many impressive contributors who will be with us and joining during these 2 days. Without further ado, let me welcome for some opening remark, Mr. Dimitri Mariassin, UNEC Deputy Executive Secretary.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the global workshop on funding and managing the sustainable development of shared basins. Now, here comes a moment when you hear a big figure. It's a trillion figure, and I speak a lot at different events, and typically one speaks about the trillions that are needed for the green energy transition or decarbonizing our economies. But today's trillion figure, 6.7 trillion to be precise, needed by 2030, and 2020 and 22.6 trillion needed by 2050 to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 6. So sustainable management of water resources more generally. This is the scale of the problem that we have in terms of funding and financing. When it comes to water, and managing transboundary water is a very big part of that. In the last cycle of reporting on the specific indicator of SDG 6.5.2, which we are very pleased to be collaborating on with our colleagues at UNESCO. So at the last reporting in 2020, out of 129 countries that reported on this indicator, 76 indicated that resource constraints is one of the main challenges they face in cooperating on transboundary waters. So again, all of you know this, but I wanted for the record to restate these important facts. Hence, of course, financing is a central topic for most of the discussions on water cooperation. It was very much the case at the Global UN Water Conference in March 2023, and as Madam Moderator mentioned, also at the first workshop we organized 3 years ago. Now, let me now unpack a little bit what we are actually talking about when we say funding and financing for transboundary water cooperation and basin management. Of course, the most obvious need is to invest in infrastructure, in high quality and sustainable infrastructure that underpins management of basins. But not less important is investment in governance capacity, in data management, in actual cooperation processes, and very, very importantly, in people who are needed to make transboundary cooperation a success. Thirdly, let me now turn to why is it actually a problem that, why if the global water corporation is such a big priority, if we know more or less what we need to invest in, so why are we talking about funding and financing as a major issue? Well, unfortunately, in the world of money and in the global development discourse, I would even dare say, and certainly in the global political discourse, the benefits of transboundary cooperation are not always recognized. It's what we call, what any business, what any bank would call value for money. Is there value for money? So unfortunately, there is still a case that needs to be made. And I think it's our responsibility vis-a-vis the financing community to make this case that transboundary cooperation is a really, really good investment. I will come to this a bit later, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot about this during the day. Secondly, the perception of transboundary cooperation as risky is a really big challenge. Fundamentally, investment is about the level of risk, of perceived risk by investors. And if it's perceived as politically risky, if it's perceived as technically too complex, as it's perceived as unpredictable, and it is unpredictable in many cases if you don't have a sound legal basis and a sound capacity on both sides of a shared river, then risks are high and investment doesn't flow. Third, of course, this is more objective. Many governments around the world, especially developing countries, face real financial constraints, be it on the side of the national budgets, on the side of being able to access external financing, and very importantly, in terms of the quality of the ecosystem for private capital to flow into water-related projects, including transboundary projects. So these are the challenges. However, we still believe that governments should invest in transboundary water arrangements. We believe that mobilizing first and foremost domestic finance and making investment in transboundary waters part of the national budget is a top priority. And having it as a solid part of a national investment plan of the national budget is an important way to secure international public funding and create strong signals for the private capital ecosystem. There are also significant opportunities that exist in the world of climate finance. This is relatively new for the water ecosystem, for transboundary water cooperation. Linking it to climate change is a very important narrative. We as UNEC are working with many of you, including at the COP28, to make this link. But this also has a dimension of linking it to climate finance. And I'm really glad that we have our colleagues from Green Climate Fund and Jeff with us today to discuss this. Now, why would you have the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe suddenly talking about funding and financing, you'd ask? We are very privileged to host the Water Convention, which is a unique global legal and intergovernmental platform that has already mobilized very big political support, has practically accelerated transboundary cooperation, and has started to address many issues that you face in riparian countries over the past 30 years. As one of the key topics, the convention's secretariat has picked financing, and I'm very pleased to say that since the first high-level workshop that we held in Astana in 2018, we have made big progress. A unique partnership was built, and here I come to a point when I have to really mention all our partners in this important endeavor. I already mentioned the unique leadership of Switzerland and the Netherlands, but this cooperation, this partnership on making sure that transboundary water cooperation is discussed with funding and financing in mind would not be possible without partners like the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, the Global Environmental Facility, the Inter-American Development Bank, and I'm sure many others. And of course, very, very importantly, the countries themselves, member states, who are the ultimate beneficiaries of this work, but whose leadership, including from ministries of finance, is so important. That is why I'd like to recognize the fact that we have contributions from ministries of finance today, it is uniquely important that not just ministries in charge of environment and water cooperation are in the room when we talk about transboundary waters, and of course, especially when we talk about funding and financing. Let me just mention that we have also prepared a publication that summarized some of the best practices, sources of funding, and models. And we hope that coming from the Astana workshop in 2018, investing in this partnership over the years, preparing this publication, convening you all, as Madam Moderator mentioned, in person today, we come to the second global workshop with a qualitative change, with something new to discuss, and new models, new initiatives, and hopefully new learning to result from this important workshop. This time we're joined by Senegal as a key partner, by Global Environmental Facility and IW Learn, and UNCDF and OECD, in addition to those who I have already mentioned as our key partners. Looking forward, dear colleagues, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me stress, first, we believe that funding and financing and talking about it in real way, with private sector in the room, with ministries of finance in the room, is very, very important for us to be able to advance transboundary water cooperation. Secondly, we need to look at multiple ways and multiple scenarios, and each basin will be unique, and each region of the world will be unique to close this funding gap. And let's build capacity of national stakeholders to think in scenarios. Just getting a no from a Ministry of Finance when you need it for a project, when you need money for a project, does not yet mean it's a no. You need to be able to look at various combinations of funding, be it IFI, private, public, and other sources. And thirdly, as I mentioned before, risk and investment go hand in hand. So the real effort needs to be made into creating predictable, transparent environments where risk is reduced, which means behavior change, which means using legal norms and standards that are recognized globally as de-risking instruments, and which means, honestly speaking, joining the Water Convention and using its instruments to its fullest potential. I would like to thank the team of the UNESC Water Convention and our co-chairs, our co-organizers, Switzerland, Netherlands, Senegal, and all the partners who are here today for making this event possible. And I assure you that from our side, we'll do everything that it takes to support the important discussion on funding and financing for transboundary waters, and go beyond discussion to offering you practical tools that actually help solve this problem on the ground. Thank you.
Very much, Ms. Yes, a well-deserved round of applause. Thank you very much, Mr. Mariassin, for these very inspirational words in setting the stage, pointing at the funding gaps, but most importantly, all the opportunities, the instruments, all the expertise also that we have in the room for this today. I think that really paved the way for an excellent interactive workshop. Without further ado, let me now give the word to Mr. Simons Binden, the head of the section water at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, my colleague. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies. Deputy Executive Secretary Dimitri Mariassin, dear representative from the Embassy of Senegal, dear Secretary to the Water Convention, Sonia, dear Chief of Transboundary Water Section at UNEC, Francesca, my colleagues from the Netherlands, Niels Vlaanderen, and also Michiga, if I spell this right, forgive me, Michiga Suga, who joins us online from the Asian Development Bank. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to have you all here to this very important workshop on transboundary water management funding and financing, Water resources management across boundaries is the ultimate basis for peace, stability, and joint prosperities. Today, we're more than 2 years after the first global workshop on funding and financing transboundary water cooperation basin development in 2020, which was online. This is the second workshop, and it's timely and of highest importance. And why? I have prepared literally all the arguments that my colleague Dimitri has already done. So it doesn't make sense. I make it really short, but it was a perfect outline of the things at stake today, what my colleague really put down. I would, however, add that 2 years or a couple of years after this, we have accrued a lot of experience. We have had new innovative endeavors and projects. We have, as a community of practice, made significant progress, and that's the reason why we are here today. Today's workshop, with more than 100 participants registered, shows that the appetite to deepen knowledge on funding and financing for transboundary water cooperation is real. And this time we can meet in person, not like 2 years ago where we all were locked down during the pandemic. We have a very rich program in front of us for these 2 days, and let's make the most out of this expertise and interactive spaces to share experiences and to build, as I said, a community of practice. Investing in water is still often considered as a risky business, and yes, it is. And also Dimitri said it's perceived an actual risk, and we have to find ways how we do decrease risks. There are a number of tools at stake and in our hands to decrease risk. We know also, based on our own experience, and I can tell you right now, Switzerland is negotiating the Rhone River Agreement with our colleagues in France, and that these are long breath endeavors. It's not something easy. It takes a while. A lot of things are at stake, but the benefits of transboundary water management and including financing are massive. And that's the reason why we're here today. We have seen several new mechanisms and innovative ways out of there to overcome these risks and to make investments in transboundary water cooperation attractive, creating incentives. Just to mention one of them, Switzerland, through its Blue Peace financing initiative, supports the development of an innovative financing instrument through a bond dedicated to finance a master plan of the river basin organization, in this case, the Senegal, the Gambia River, through the OMVG that you all know. We will hear more about this flagship initiative later and how basin development plans can be turned into platforms for investment. But this, of course, is the returns on the investment is multi-sectoral and presented. Switzerland, as a lead party with Netherlands of the program area facilitating funding and financing of transboundary water cooperation and basin development, wishes to sincerely thank the Secretariat of UNEC for the excellent preparation of this workshop, as well as all the other partners who are involved. Let me wish you and let me wish us all a very fruitful and inspiring workshop. Many thanks.
Very much, dear Simon, Mr. Sbinden. Let me now give the floor to our dear and estimated co-lead party, the Netherlands, Mr. Niels Vlaanderen, Coordinator International Water Affairs.
Thank you, Dimka. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start my remarks with thanking our friends from Switzerland, Simon and Dimka, but there are many others behind them, for the excellent cooperation over the years. The activity on funding and financing has been a shared effort from the start, some 5 years ago. Also, of course, the Secretariat, I'd like to thank for their efforts to put together this interesting lineup in the program today and tomorrow. Now some words on funding and financing. On many occasions, such as the UN Water Conference in March this year, water is put forward as the enabler of the whole Sustainable Development Agenda. When we are truly convinced that water is the driver for sustainable development, then we should focus on the need of improving the enabling environment, to create the institutions, the policy instruments, the regulatory frameworks and funding required to sustainably manage our waters. To create the conditions so finance will flow to water and optimal contribute to the prosperity of our economies and the well-being of our societies. To include the broader values of water into our decision-making. And to take a holistic, integrated and long-term approach, taking into account the consequences of population growth, urbanization, and the effects of climate change. Water is complex and often not very well understood by people taking decisions that affect water and those in the financial world. On the other hand, people in the water sector know little about finance and how the financial sector works. Water-related investments deliver substantial benefits for water security and sustainable development. And water-related investments refer to a broad range of investments that contribute to water security through the delivery of water and sanitation services, the management of water resources, and water-related risks, too much, too little, too polluted. Beyond the water sector, water-related investment connect multiple other sectors and policy agendas, including agriculture, energy, urban development, public health, and education. Although investments in water make sense from an economic perspective, often this translates not into investments in water projects at scale. Lack of understanding the perceived risk, mentioned before to my two colleagues on my right side, and the benefits lead to undervaluing of water resources and benefits associated with water investments by both public and private actors, limit financing opportunities. Also, there are distinctive bottlenecks that hinder the mobilization of sources of finance to contribute to a water secure future. These bottlenecks include weak enabling environments, insufficiently robust strategic planning and prioritization, a lack of attractive risk-return profiles for specific projects, and the local, small-scale nature of many investments. Often, water-related investment typically lack distinct revenue streams and assets that can be used as collateral, given that such investments are usually part of a larger system for the delivery of water-related services and management of resources, lacking specific ring-fenced revenues. And the transboundary aspect of this workshop adds an extra layer of complexity and potential risks. To finalize some conclusions from our first reports, I like to recall the importance of building joint bodies and strong legal and institutional frameworks, strengthening governance and elaborating basin development plans are key. Domestic budgetary resources from riparian states are and should remain the primary funding resource to support joint bodies, core cost and basin water management activities. Besides domestic public funding, there are a number of other public funding and financing options, and they are available for riparian states and joint bodies. And lastly, in specific cases, private finance can also be leveraged as it offers opportunities to cover transboundary basin infrastructure development costs. For me, the main question is, what can we realistically expect from mobilizing different sources of funding and financing, and what is needed to unlock these resources? I'm looking forward to our sessions and discussions our coming 2 days, and I'd like to thank you.
Thank you very much, Niels, for also recalling this wealth of knowledge and the foundation upon which we're going to reflect today and tomorrow. I now have the pleasure to welcome our next speaker who will join us online, Mrs. Michiko Suga, representative for Europe of the Asian Development Bank. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you all hear me? Good. Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, it's a total pleasure for me to join you virtually today, and I wish I could be there in person. But I wish you all the best to speak on this extremely important topic of financing transboundary cooperation and basin development. As we've heard already, transboundary basin cooperation development is critical for sustainable development, for achieving energy and food security, safeguarding livelihoods, and preserving biodiversity. Over half of the world's freshwater flows through and across national borders, and 40% of the world's population lives near these water bodies. While we've made significant progress in water security, it's disheartening to see that still about 500 million people in the Asia-Pacific region still lack access to basic water supplies, and about 1.14 billion people still lack access to safe sanitation. Moreover, as we all feel day by day, the impacts of climate change make the need for improved transboundary water cooperation ever more urgent. Changes in precipitation patterns, glacial melt, and the frequency of extreme weather events are impacting water availability and influencing disaster risks. So supporting regional cooperation and integration is a key pillar of the ADB's long-term corporate strategy, which we call Strategy 2030. This includes support to facilitate transboundary cooperation and water security. And it's very timely that today's workshop is taking place at the same time as COP28, because there, ADB, alongside Nepal's Minister of Forest and Environment, Mr. Birendra Prasad Mahato, we just launched the Climate Resilience Initiative, which we call Building Adaptation and Resilience in the Hindu Kush Himalayas. The Hindu Kush Himalayas, often referred to as the Asia Water Tower, is where 10 of Asia's major rivers originate, which sustain 1.6 billion people, including through transboundary rivers such as the Ganges and the Indus. Climate change-induced melting of glaciers is expected to contribute to more extreme flooding and reduced river flows, making effective transboundary water cooperation absolutely essential to cope with these changes. In partnership with the government of Bhutan and Nepal, this initiative focuses on managing risks and developing climate-resilient infrastructure in the region, and will combine cutting-edge risk assessment and risk management tools to help guide investment decisions for large-scale infrastructure. As you're all aware, effective transboundary water management will require significant investments in a number of areas, and let me just mention three. One is the shared data and information platforms to provide accurate information on variables such as water availability and exposure to water-related risks, which also create new opportunities for cost-effectively collecting and sharing information between countries and regions. Two, the establishment and strengthening of joint bodies, such as river basin commissions, are essential for facilitating international cooperation. So there we have the Mekong River Commission in Southeast Asia, for example, who provides a good example of how joint bodies can facilitate improved transboundary water resource management. And three is integrated planning approaches, namely integrated water resource management, which are needed to ensure effective management and equitable use of water between users and between countries. As you will hear later today from my ADB colleague, Mr. Yoshida, who is there with you today, ADB has been working with the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation Program, which we in short call CAREC, through its water pillar to promote improved transboundary water cooperation. The CAREC water pillar is supporting regional investments in water, knowledge development, and creating a platform for dialogue and facilitation of capacity building. And I believe you will be hearing a very interesting presentation from Mr. Yoshida. Let me quickly mention that ADB recognizes the diverse water-related needs, and as such applies tailored approaches. We achieve this through well-established partnerships in our developing member countries and by maintaining a strong presence in the field, aided by ADB country offices in almost all of our climate countries. Since 2011, we've committed about $30 billion for water-related investments. But addressing water and sanitation challenges requires even more investment, as we've just heard. Up to 2030, we will need about $53 billion per year just for water infrastructure. Of this, we hope that at least 18 billion per year will come from the private sector. I believe we are all working hard to find new and better avenues to get the private sector involved, not just in the water sector, of course. So as you can imagine, at ADB, we work passionately with the private sector, now even more so as ADB is being reorganized along these same lines. I'd like to conclude by saying that although our transboundary water management challenges seem immense, workshops such as this provide the opportunity to bring together some of the world's best water experts and experiences to collectively identify innovative financing solutions for transboundary water cooperation. I really believe that there are many opportunities and solutions now available to us to choose from. Our developing member countries now have easier access to affordable equipment and services, including new high-level technologies and innovations. There's greater knowledge sharing of good practices between and within countries, and there's growing participation of alternative financing sources, such as the private sector, insurance industry, the transfer of carbon credits, and an increasing willingness to pay from water users who receive access to better services. With this in mind, I wish you all a constructive and stimulating discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Suga, for sharing with us this very, again, inspirational word, for sharing about the climate resilient initiative and also pointing at the importance of the private sector and the different venues that we can get more involved and have more involvement of the private sector in our transboundary water cooperation endeavor. We look forward to continue the conversation with Mr. Yoshida, who is present in the room. Thank you to the Asian Development Bank. I will now turn to my left-hand side to introduce our last high-level speaker for these opening remarks, Mr. François Dienne, first advisor at the permanent representation of Senegal to the United Nations. The floor is yours.
Merci, Madame la modératrice. Alors, je voudrais tout d'abord présenter les excuses de mon ambassadeur qui, pour des contraintes de dernière minute, n'a pu se joindre à nous. Donc, avec votre permission, je vais lire la déclaration qu'il avait préparée. Monsieur le secrétaire exécutif adjoint de la Commission économique des Nations Unies pour l'Europe, Monsieur le représentant du Royaume des Pays-Bas, Monsieur le représentant de la Direction du développement et de la coopération, Madame la représentante de la Banque asiatique de développement, Mesdames et Messieurs, la mission permanente est heureuse de prendre part à cet atelier important sur le financement de la coopération transfrontalière des organismes de bassin. Je voudrais remercier chaleureusement le secrétariat de la Convention sur l'eau et les co-organisateurs, la Suisse, les Pays-Bas, pour la tenue de cette rencontre et pour la pertinence du thème choisi qui nous permettra, sans nul doute, d'approfondir la réflexion sur le financement des organismes de bassin. Mesdames et Messieurs, le gouvernement du Sénégal accorde une grande priorité à la gestion des ressources en eau partagées dans un esprit de coopération et de solidarité. Conscient que la gestion et l'utilisation de ces ressources constituent un enjeu stratégique pour assurer le développement et préserver la paix et la sécurité, le Sénégal n'a eu de cesse de promouvoir avec ses États voisins la coopération transfrontière dans la gestion des ressources en eau. C'est dans cet esprit de solidarité que les chefs d'État et de gouvernement du Mali, de la Mauritanie et du Sénégal ont signé le 11 mars 1972 à Nouakchott l'acte constitutif de l'organisation de mise en valeur du fleuve Sénégal. que la République de Guinée a rejoint en 2006. De même, l'Organisation pour la mise en valeur du fleuve Gambie a vu le jour en 1978 et regroupe la Gambie, la Guinée-Bissau et le Sénégal. Au cours de l'exercice de son mandat en qualité de membre non permanent du Conseil de sécurité, le Sénégal a initié et promu la thématique eau, paix et sécurité entre 2016 et 2017. Et la promotion de ce sujet avait alors reçu le soutien des plus hautes autorités, en particulier de Monsieur le Président de la République, qui avait présidé en formule alia une réunion le 22 avril 2016 à New York. De même, mon pays avait saisi l'occasion de la présidence du Conseil de sécurité pour organiser le 22 novembre 2016 et pour la première fois de l'histoire du Conseil, un débat public sur la même thématique. Nous pouvons aussi noter que le Sénégal est le deuxième pays hors de la région pan-européenne à avoir adhéré à la Convention sur l'eau. Dans le domaine des eaux souterraines, les ministres en charge de l'eau de la Gambie, de la Guinée-Bissau, de la Mauritanie et du Sénégal ont signé le 29 septembre 2021, à l'occasion de la 9e réunion des parties à la Convention sur l'eau, une déclaration commune afin de renforcer la collaboration transfrontalière dans le bassin aquifère sénégalo-mauritanien commun aux 4 pays. Enfin, mon pays a organisé en mars 2022 le 9e Forum mondial sur l'eau, le 9e Forum mondial de l'eau sur le thème de la sécurité de l'eau pour la paix et le développement. Cette rencontre a conduit à la déclaration de Dakar qui invite la communauté internationale à garantir le droit à l'eau et à l'assainissement pour tous, à assurer une gouvernance inclusive de l'eau et à renforcer la coopération dans l'optique d'atteindre les objectifs de développement durable liés à l'eau et à l'assainissement. Vu ce qui précède et son fort engagement sur les questions de l'eau, le Sénégal ne fait pas moins sur la question des financements. Et cela se justifie par les investissements assurés tant à l'OMVS qu'à l'OMVG, mais également par les initiatives proposées par les autorités sénégalaises, notamment le Fonds bleu, proposé par le président de la République à la Conférence des Nations Unies sur les ODD en septembre 2015. Comme vous le savez, l'un des plus grands défis auxquels est confronté le secteur de l'eau en général est celle de la coopération transfrontière, demeure en particulier le financement. C'est dans ce cadre que nous avons mis, avec le soutien du président de la République et des partenaires, lors du 9e Forum mondial de l'eau, le panel international de haut niveau sur les investissements dans le secteur de l'eau en Afrique. Je suis donc confiant que les échanges que nous aurons au cours de l'atelier nous permettront de proposer des actions concrètes visant à assurer un financement durable des organisations de bassin. Une grande part sera nécessairement assurée par les financements publics et les ressources domestiques. Cependant, la coopération internationale sera également d'une grande utilité ainsi que d'autres sources de financement. Je termine mon propos en réitérant l'engagement du Sénégal à poursuivre ses efforts pour une gestion concertée des ressources en eau et en souhaitant de fructueux échanges. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Dienne, pour ces propos qui reflètent bien l'engagement important et pionnier également du Sénégal dans les questions de gestion transfrontière. Le Sénégal, pays ami et partenaire de la Suisse également. Before turning to the keynote speaker, let me inform you that there will be tomorrow at 5 o'clock a high-level closing remark by Mr. Claude Gascon, who is the Director of Strategy and Operations at the GEF. Mr. Gascon will join us online, and I hope that many of you will still be with us tomorrow at 5 p.m. to attend this important closure. It will also be, of course, attended by the wonderful Secretary of the Water Convention, Mrs. Sonia Koppel, who is on my right-hand side. Now, we are moving to what I think many of us are often waiting with a certain thrill. It's the keynote speech. And for the keynote speech, I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Christopher Flensborg, Head of Climate and Sustainable Finance, Skandinaviska Enskilda Banken, also known as SEB. Mr. Christopher Flensborg joined SEB in 2003 and is Head of Climate and Sustainable Finance, mandated to identify areas where financial mandates can help solve societal challenges and develop and implement solutions through collaboration with clients. As a pioneer in green bonds, which was developed in close collaboration with the World Bank, he has developed concepts and mechanisms enabling mainstream investors to address climate investments in their portfolios. As a thought leader, SEB works to enable access for mainstream investors' core portfolios to sustainable investments. SEB goals is to be a prime provider of mainstream financial climate solutions across various financial mandates. And in this capacity, Mr. Flensborg is involved in climate investment strategies worldwide, from development to execution, from borrowers to investors. Mr. Flensborg spent over 30 years working in leading international financial institutions. He received his management training from international banks through schooling at Oxford, INSEAD, and Harvard Kennedy School. Mr. Flensborg, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It was a long introduction. My apologies, I didn't test that, but it's right. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's a privilege to be among so much competence and so much engagement. I'm really looking forward to learn from you. Apart from being an investment banker and a full-blooded investment banker, meaning that I understand how money is moving, I'm also a human being, like the rest of the business, like the rest of the Wall Street, like the rest of the banks. We also want to contribute, and we have a lot to contribute with. We can't do that without you. And I think that needs to be stressed, and I'm coming back to that a little bit later. But we're here because of water. And why water from our side? And it's actually coming back to the Netherlands. So some 8 years ago, we brought the idea of green bonds, not blue bonds, but it should have been blue bonds, to the Dutch Water Bank. And we did green bonds, which were financing water there. And ever since then, we've been learning about how a country that's mostly below the North Sea is actually coping with the water challenges. So we have learned that water challenges might be a physical problem. We are all talking about water quality and water quantity, but if it is managed right, you can actually use it as a resource. So I think today, 20% of the economy in the Netherlands is based on water. So it's not primarily a physical problem, it's a structural problem. So we can deal with it. That's at least what we have learned from that point of view. Now, I'm here to talk about how to mobilize private capital. And it might not be that challenging, but there's a little bit of a path to get there. To mobilize private capital, you need to mobilize institutions. And to mobilize institutions, you need to mobilize people, which I think was said a little bit earlier. So this is all coming down to individuals. What is driving the individuals? It's about rules and mandates. It's about how money moves. And I think it was talked a little bit about before that the perception of risk, but it's a little bit more than that. Basically, I'm trained, as I said, as an investment banker. I'm thinking as an investment banker. That can be my contribution to this society. And basically, finance is moving with the perceived risk, highest risk-adjusted return. So that's a couple of different words, and you can work with every single of those words: the perception, the risk, the return, and the adjustment of that. And if you go down there and start in a sequence, you would know how to mobilize bankers and thereby institutions and thereby private capital. Now, alongside that, we're also talking in our society about efficiency, scale. So we don't, as a bank, we don't have a lot of resources. Our investors don't have a lot of resources. So often we will have hundreds of billions of dollars being managed by 50 people, 100 people, meaning that scalability, comparability, standardization, the lack of a better word, becomes important. And there I would actually go a little bit back to the Netherlands. So I had a discussion with Niels just before coming in here, and we talked about Holland. So we have been financing 8, 9, 10 billion for the Dutch Water Bank, which have been financing a lot of water authorities. So we're actually not financing the water bank. We are indirectly financing the water authorities. However, if one of those water authorities should have been coming to us, it would have been too small. And they probably wouldn't speak our language. And they surely wouldn't speak the language of the financial markets, meaning that we couldn't bank them. So what Holland did, what Netherlands did in a very, very nice way, that is that they actually converted a treasury center into a bank. And that bank convert the languages, aggregating the needs and converting the language from the experts, from the water authorities to meet the financial markets. And that has been very, very efficient. I think that the water bank is borrowing not far from the Dutch government, which is borrowing not far from the best rates in the world. Meaning that that is a way to aggregate and convert a language. So scale, efficiency becomes important. But lastly, which is not less important as well, you need to meet your investors. So why is your investment relevant for them? Is it because of the return? Then you have to pay up. Can you find other identifiers, collaborations, links, migration issues, engagement, which are appealing? Then you're talking a different language. So depending on what you're actually searching and what rate you're searching, you need to go into depth of the stakeholders of the investors and find out what they actually need, because then you can speak to the investors themselves. So this is a little bit about the takeaways we have from working with the green bonds, which was mentioned earlier. And I actually had a thought when I heard the earlier speeches and also seeing this forum. I remember when we brought the idea of green bonds to the World Bank back in 2007, we had like a handful of investors, and there wasn't that many. And then we went on a roadshow for 4 or 5 years, and there was only one bank doing it. There was actually only one banker doing it. That was me. And sometimes we'll have 2 people, sometimes we'll have 5 people. Today, you can't have a green bond forum without 500 people. And you can't find a banker who's not an expert. I might not be the best expert anymore, but I do know what changed the organizations, right? And these kind of things are quite important. And then thinking about this, I mean, today we have a $3 trillion green bond market or label bond market. I mean, we can have that in the water market in 10 years as well. Slightly short of the 20 trillion that was talked about before, but it can be done. And it's starting with one person, it's starting with each of us. So that was just a thought I had in respect to the introduction and seeing all this competence in this room. This can be done, but it requires collaboration. Now, more importantly, what can you do? Seen from my perspective, I mean, there's many stakeholders like me, so you probably get a lot of wishes, but from my perspective. So you can identify assets. So eventually investors are investing in assets. So you can aggregate those assets, convert them into a language which is understood by the investors. They have different mandates. Are you meeting those mandates? If you don't meet those mandates, you need to change the mandates from the investors. That's a long route. We did that with the green bond. It can be done with water as well, but it's easier done if you're actually using instruments already existing in the market. You need to analyze mandates and what is driving the mandates, going back to the stakeholders of the investors. If you understand that, you can speak the language of the investors. Then you need to convert it. But most importantly, you need to coordinate. You need to speak with one voice. You need to make sure that the governance you are presenting is presented the same way, meaning that the collaboration you're having here is essential for being capable of doing that. And you need to do that because of the scale. Going back to the Dutch Water Bank, it's one bank representing all the water authorities, meaning that it's capable of converting, aggregating, and thereby securing cheap financing for the water authorities in Holland. It's about risk. It's about converting risk. It's about meeting risk. So I might be speaking the wrong tone in this room, and I might upset a few people, but I still think that it's worth addressing certain issues every now and then. So we have a donor market right now, which is addressed to support the international financial institutions, which is fantastic. We are learning from them. We're collaborating with them, and they are teaching us on a daily basis, securing the governance around that. However, if we alongside working with the MDBs also need to address and mobilize the private sector, then we might need to look into the way that donorship is created. Maybe the private sector is not requiring the same systems as is in place for the MDBs. Maybe we need to understand whatever it's offtake guarantees, which we have in most of Europe, whatever it's other models that need to be set alongside the collaboration with the MDB. The MDB is extremely important, so don't get me wrong there. But if there is a need to mobilize the private sector, one might need to look into the way that guarantees are being given. And it's about communication, speaking with one voice. So this is a little bit what I kind of took with me in respect to what can be done and what should be done. If you do that, you can create a sizable forward-looking assets for your stakeholders, and you should do that ensuring that they recognize the collaboration, not only the investments. The last thing I want to say, because I'm running out of time here and I can speak for a long time, that is that I'm absolutely convinced that to continue living the way we're living, collaboration is essential. And to make the collaboration work, we need translation between regions and between sectors to ensure mutual respect and mutual appreciation. We can do this fast, as it's often said, by walking alone. But if we want to walk long, we need to do it together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Flensburg. Thank you for this keynote. Thank you for being also so precise in noting the different steps to take. I think that your mere presence here is already a sign of success of this workshop, which is basically about bridging the gap and linking the word between water and the investors. And this is really wonderful to have you here. And I noted mobilizing capital, mobilizing people. We're very grateful to have mobilized you, and we hope to continue this conversation between those 2 days.
I'm looking forward to.
Thank you, Mr. Flensburg. Thank you. Before concluding this opening session, I'd like to invite the Secretariat of the Water Convention to present the objectives of the workshop and also a few organizational information about the 2 days. I turn to my right-hand side to Diane Guerrier and Sonia Koppel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And good morning once again to everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all here. And just to start off, I would like to build on what exactly was said by the keynote speaker, that as it was mentioned earlier, more than 60% of all freshwater worldwide is shared by 2 or more countries. And that's why cooperating on such water is so crucial. And that's also why transboundary cooperation was included in the Sustainable Development Goals, and specific indicator was created to measure progress. And we've been impressed by the fact that more than 80% of countries, including many of you here, have actually reported on the progress of transboundary water